I woke up in a hospital bed with a scar across my chest and a voicemail from a lawyer I'd never met. My daughter's voice came through the phone 3 days later. Calm, careful, like she was reading from a script. Mom, we need to talk about the house. Margaret Hale had lived in the same house for 37 years. A narrow two-story with cracked blue shutters and a porch that smelled like wet leaves in October. She raised her daughter there, buried her husband from the front steps, and kept every receipt, every letter, every scrap of paper that mattered in a cedar box under her bed. When her heart gave out in the grocery store parking lot, she thought she'd be gone a week, maybe two. She didn't think she'd come home to find the locks changed, the furniture gone, and her daughter standing in the driveway with keys that didn't belong to her anymore. The hospital bracelet was still on my wrist when Carol pulled into my street. I hadn't asked her to cut it off yet. Part of me wanted to keep it there. Proof, I suppose, that I'd survived something. That 2 weeks had passed and I was still here, still breathing, even if my chest ached every time I moved wrong. Carol didn't say much on the drive. She never does. Just kept her eyes on the road, hands at 10 and 2, the way people drive when they're carrying something fragile. I watched the trees pass, the same trees I'd driven past for 37 years. Everything looked the same. Until it didn't. We turned onto Maple and I felt it before I saw it. That pull in your stomach when something's off, like walking into a room and knowing someone's moved your things. Carol slowed down as we approached the house, and that's when I saw the driveway. Empty. My car was gone. I blinked, stared, waited for it to reappear, like maybe my eyes were still adjusting from all those fluorescent hospital lights. But no, the driveway was just bare. Gray concrete, a few oil stains, nothing else. Maybe Emma took it in for service, Carol said quietly, like she was trying to convince herself more than me. I didn't answer. The flower pots were gone too. The two terracotta ones I kept on either side of the porch steps, the ones I planted petunias in every spring, just gone. Not tipped over, not empty, gone. Carol pulled up to the curb and put the car in park. I sat there staring at my house. The porch light was off. I always left that light on, always, even during the day. It was a habit I'd had since my husband died. Some superstition about keeping the house awake, like it needed to know someone still cared. But now it was dark. The whole house looked dark. Carol helped me out of the car. I moved slow, one hand pressed to my chest where the scar was still fresh beneath my shirt. The doctor said I'd been lucky. Said my heart had stopped for 43 seconds in that grocery store parking lot before the paramedics got to me. 43 seconds? I didn't feel lucky. I felt tired and cold, even though it was June. Carol walked with me up the steps. Her arm looped through mine like I was something that might tip over. Maybe I was. I pulled my keys from my purse, the same keys I'd had for decades, worn smooth at the edges, the house key scratched and dull. I slid it into the lock. It didn't turn. I frowned, tried again, wiggling it the way you do when a lock's being stubborn. Nothing. Here, let me try, Carol said gently. She took the key, tried it herself, jiggled the handle, still nothing. We stood there on the porch, both of us staring at the door like it might explain itself. Maybe, maybe Emma changed the locks, Carol offered, for safety, while you were gone. I looked at her. She looked away. I pulled out my phone. My hands were shaking. Not from fear, not yet, just from exhaustion. I scrolled to Emma's name and pressed call. It rang and rang, and then, "Hi, you've reached Emma. Leave a message." I hung up. Tried again. Same thing. I lowered the phone and stood there staring at the dark window beside the door. The curtain was gone. I'd had a lace curtain there for 15 years. Now there was just glass. Empty glass. "Margaret," Carol said softly, "why don't you come stay at my place tonight? We can figure this out in the morning." I shook my head. "I'm fine." "You're not fine. I just need to sit." I lowered myself onto the porch step, the wood cold and hard beneath me. My chest throbbed, a dull ache that pulsed in rhythm with my heartbeat. Carol sat down beside me. Didn't say anything, just sat. The sun was starting to set. The sky went soft and orange behind the roofline, the same way it always did in summer. The same light I'd watched 1,000 times from this exact spot. Sitting here with my husband on warm nights, sitting here alone after he was gone, sitting here with Emma when she was small, her legs too short to reach the ground. I used to know every sound this street made: the hum of the Alvarez's air conditioner, the dog 2 houses down that barked at squirrels, the way the wind moved through the oak tree in the yard, rattling the leaves like paper. But now it all felt distant, like I was listening through water. "Where's my car, Carol?" I asked quietly. She didn't answer right away. "I don't know, hun." "Where are my flower pots?" Silence. I tried Emma's number again. No answer. The sky darkened. The streetlights came on one by one, casting long shadows across the lawn. I sat on that porch step until the air turned cool and my legs went numb. Carol stayed beside me the whole time, her hand resting lightly on my shoulder. I kept staring at the empty driveway, kept waiting for headlights to pull in, for Emma's voice, for something that made sense. But nothing came. Just the quiet, just the house standing there in the dark like it didn't know me anymore. And somewhere beneath the exhaustion and the confusion, a small voice in the back of my mind whispered the question. I wasn't ready to ask out loud yet. What happened while I was gone? I woke up on Susan's couch with the sun already high. Not the soft kind of morning light, the kind that tells you you've slept too long. The blanket she'd given me smelled like lavender detergent, clean, safe, nothing like my own house. I could hear her in the kitchen, the clink of a spoon against ceramic, the hum of the refrigerator. Normal sounds, the kind you don't notice until everything else has gone quiet. I sat up slowly. My ribs still ached from the accident. My head felt heavy, like I'd been underwater. Susan appeared in the doorway with a mug of tea, and she didn't ask how I slept. She just set it down on the side table and smiled. The kind of smile that says, I know. I won't make you talk about it. There's toast if you want it, she said. I nodded, but I didn't move. The knock came just after 9. Susan opened the door and I heard a man's voice. Professional, clipped. Delivery for Margaret Hayes. I got up. My legs felt strange, like they didn't quite belong to me yet. The courier handed me a large manila envelope. Heavy, official. The return address was embossed in neat black letters. Whitmore and Associates Real Estate Law. I stared at it. Susan looked at me. You want me to stay? I shook my head. She touched my arm once, then disappeared into the kitchen. I sat back down on the couch. The envelope felt wrong in my hands. Too clean, too formal. I opened it slowly like it might bite. Inside was a letter, typed, dated 3 days ago. Below that, a stack of papers clipped together, legal-sized. The words swam at first. Sale agreement, transfer of title, closing statement, and then they started to sharpen. The house. My house. Sold. The date at the top of the contract was 2 weeks ago. I was still in the ICU then, still waking up in pieces trying to remember my own name. The sale price stared back at me, $340,000. I turned the page, and there it was, my signature. It looked like mine. The slant was right, the way the M looped. But I'd never seen this paper before in my life. I would have remembered. I would have known. My hand started to shake. I flipped to the next page. There, in smaller print near the bottom, Power of Attorney, Emma Louise Hayes. Emma, I don't know how long I sat there. Long enough for the tea to go cold, long enough for Susan to peek in once and then leave again without a word. I picked up my phone. My hands were still shaking, but I found Emma's number. I pressed call. It rang. Once, twice, and 3 times, and then her voice. Mom? I froze. She sounded normal, maybe a little tired, but normal, like nothing had happened, like the world hadn't just cracked open beneath me. Emma, I said. My voice came out thin, barely there. Mom, are you okay? I've been meaning to call. Things have been crazy with work and the house, I said. Silence. Not the kind where someone's thinking, the kind where someone's deciding. What about it? She asked. Her tone shifted, just slightly, just enough. I looked down at the paper in my lap. The signature that wasn't mine, the date I couldn't remember. You sold it, I said. Another pause. Mom, we talked about this. No, I said, we didn't. You were in the hospital. You couldn't take care of it anymore. I had to make a decision. Her voice was calm, reasonable, like she was explaining something simple to a child. I was in the ICU, I said. I didn't sign anything. You gave me power of attorney, she said. 2 years ago. Remember? After Dad died, you said you wanted me to handle things if something happened. I closed my eyes. I did remember that. I remembered sitting in the lawyer's office, the smell of old carpet and printer ink. Emma had said it was just a precaution, just in case. But this wasn't in case, that this was now. You should have waited, I said. You should have asked me. I did what I thought was best, she said. Her voice was harder now, edges showing. You couldn't live there anymore, Mom. You can barely walk. You can't take care of yourself. What was I supposed to do? Let me decide, I said. She didn't answer right away. When she spoke again, her voice was softer, practiced. I'm coming up this weekend, she said. We'll talk then. Okay? I'll explain everything. Emma, I have to go. I'm late for a meeting. Emma, wait. The line went dead. I sat there with the phone still pressed to my ear. The dial tone hummed, flat, empty. Susan came back into the room. She didn't ask what happened. She just sat down beside me, close enough that I could feel her there. I looked down at the paper again, the signature that looked like mine but wasn't. The house I'd lived in for 30 years, gone in a transaction I never agreed to. The sun had shifted. It was pouring through the window now, bright and relentless. I folded the letter carefully, slipped it back into the envelope. And I realized quietly that I didn't know my daughter anymore. Maybe I never had. The rental car pulled up just as the streetlights came on. I was sitting by Susan's front window, the curtain barely pulled back. I'd been there since 4, watching, waiting, the way you do when you're not sure if someone's actually coming. The car was sleek, silver, the kind that looks expensive even from a distance. It didn't belong on this street. Neither did the woman who stepped out of it. Emma, but not the Emma I remembered. She was wearing a blazer, cream-colored, pressed. Her hair was pulled back tight and her heels clicked against the pavement like punctuation marks. She looked polished, put together, like she'd just stepped out of a boardroom. I hadn't seen her in 6 months. She stopped at the curb and checked her phone before looking up at the house. Even from where I sat, I could see her face. Calm, controlled, the kind of expression you practice in a mirror. Susan came up behind me. You want me to stay? I shook my head. I'll be in the kitchen, she said softly. I stood. My legs felt heavy. I opened the door before Emma could knock. She smiled when she saw me, the kind of smile that doesn't quite reach your eyes. Hi, Mom. Her voice was warm, familiar, but there was something underneath it, something I couldn't name yet. Emma, I said. She stepped inside, bringing the smell of expensive perfume and new leather. She glanced around Susan's living room, at the worn couch, the crocheted blankets, the framed photos of people she didn't know. This is nice, she said. Are you doing okay here? I nodded. She set her purse down on the coffee table. Designer, black. It probably cost more than Susan's couch. Should we sit? She asked. I lowered myself into the armchair. She sat across from me on the couch, straight-backed, hands folded in her lap. We looked at each other. For a moment, I thought I saw something flicker in her face, something soft, but then it was gone. I know you're upset, she said. I didn't answer. And I should have called sooner. I know that. Things just got complicated. You sold my house, I said. She took a breath, measured, like she'd been preparing for this. I did, she said. And I know it feels sudden, but Mom, you have to understand, the house was falling apart. The roof was leaking. The foundation had cracks. You were in the ICU and the doctors weren't sure if you'd... She paused. I had to make a decision. I looked at her hands. They were folded too neatly, too still. You didn't ask me, I said. You were unconscious, she said. Her voice stayed calm, even. I had power of attorney. I did what I thought was best. Best for who? The question hung there. She didn't flinch. didn't look away. For you, she said. You can't live alone anymore, Mom. You can barely walk. You need care, real care, the kind I can't give you from 3 states away. I felt something tighten in my chest. I didn't ask you to take care of me, I said. No, she said quietly. You never do. The silence that followed was thick, heavy. She leaned forward slightly, her voice softening, rehearsed again, but gentler this time. The money is safe, she said. Everything was handled legally through Whitmore and Associates. They're one of the best firms in the state. The sale went through clean, no issues. Where is it? I asked. She blinked. Where's what? The money. It's being held in a trust, she said. For your care, for whatever you need. A trust, I repeated. Yes, it's the smartest way to manage it. That way it's protected. You won't have to worry about who manages it, I asked. She hesitated, just for a second. I do, she said, as your power of attorney. I looked at her, really looked at her. The woman sitting across from me was a stranger, polished and careful and saying all the right things. But somewhere underneath, I could feel it, the distance, the wall. I want to see the paperwork, I said. Of course, she said. I'll send it all to you. Copies of everything. The sale agreement, the trust documents, all of it. When? Soon, she said. I just need to get everything organized. Emma. Mom. She stood, smoothed her blazer. I know this is hard. I know it doesn't feel right, but I promise you, I'm doing this for you. You'll be taken care of. That's all that matters. She picked up her purse. I stared at her. You're leaving? I have an early flight, she said. I just wanted to see you, to explain. You didn't explain anything, I said. She looked at me then, really looked. And for just a moment, I thought I saw something break in her face. Something small and tired and sad, but then she turned away. I'll call you next week, she said. She walked to the door, opened it. The night air rushed in, cool and sharp. I wanted to stop her, to ask her to stay, to ask her what had happened to us, but I didn't. She stepped outside. The door clicked shut behind her. I sat there in the quiet. Susan came back into the room. She didn't ask. She just sat down beside me and waited. Outside, the rental car started. The headlights swept across the window, and then she was gone. I looked down at my hands. Empty, no keys, no paperwork, no answers, just the faint smell of perfume lingering in the air. And the feeling, slow and cold and certain, that something had been taken from me that I'd never get back. I asked her before she left. Standing in Susan's doorway, watching her walk toward that sleek silver car, I called out. My voice cracked. Can I go back? Just once, to get my things. She stopped, turned. For a moment, she didn't say anything, just looked at me like she was calculating something. There's not much left, she said. I know, I said. I need to see it. She checked her phone, then nodded. Tomorrow, she said. Morning, I'll meet you there. The house looked smaller in the daylight. I stood on the sidewalk staring up at it. The paint was peeling near the gutters. The porch steps sagged in the middle. I'd stopped noticing those things years ago, but now, standing outside like a visitor, I could see what Emma must have seen. A house that was tired, a house that was done. Emma's rental car was already in the driveway. She stood near the front door, arms crossed, keys in one hand. She'd dressed down today, jeans, a sweater, but she still looked out of place. I walked up the path slowly. My cane clicked against the concrete. She didn't say anything, just unlocked the door and stepped aside. The air inside was different, stale, empty, like no one had breathed there in weeks. The entryway was bare, no coat rack, no rug, no mirror on the wall where I used to check my lipstick before leaving for church. I stepped inside. The floor creaked under my weight. The sound echoed. Emma stayed by the door, watching. Most of the furniture went to auction, she said. Her voice was flat, informational. The couch, the dining table, a few collectors bought some of the older pieces. I nodded. I didn't trust myself to speak yet. I moved through the living room. The walls were pale rectangles where picture frames used to hang. 30 years of memories gone. The mantel was empty, the bookshelves bare. It didn't feel like my house anymore. It felt like a crime scene. I climbed the stairs slowly, gripping the banister. Emma stayed downstairs. I could hear her shifting her weight, checking her phone, sighing quietly. The bedroom door was open. I stepped inside. The bed was gone. The dresser, the rocking chair my mother gave me when Emma was born, all of it erased. But the room still smelled faintly of lavender. From the sachets I used to keep in the drawers. I stood there for a moment, just breathing. Then I lowered myself to my knees. It hurt. My ribs protested, my legs shook, but I got down, and I reached under where the bed used to be. The cedar box was still there, pushed into the corner, dust covered, untouched. My hands trembled as I pulled it toward me. The box was heavier than I remembered. I ran my fingers over the lid. The wood was smooth, worn soft by time. My father made it when I was 12. Carved my initials into the corner. M-A-H. Margaret Ann Hayes. I glanced toward the doorway. Emma was still downstairs. I could hear her pacing. I opened the box. Inside, the smell of cedar and old paper rose up to meet me. Receipts, yellowed and brittle, photos with curled edges, my wedding picture. Emma as a baby, David in his uniform, birthday cards, anniversary cards, a pressed flower from my mother's funeral. All the things you keep because you can't bear to throw them away. I sifted through them carefully, slowly. And then, at the bottom, I found it, the envelope. It was plain, white, unsealed, no writing on the outside. I'd kept it hidden here for years, tucked beneath everything else. A secret I'd never told anyone. Not David, not Emma, not even myself, most days. I pulled it out, held it in my lap. My hands were shaking again. I didn't open it. I couldn't. Not here, not now. Instead, I slipped it into the inside pocket of my coat, pressed it flat against my ribs. Mom? Emma's voice drifted up the stairs. You okay up there? I closed the box. My throat felt tight. I'm fine, I called back. My voice sounded thin. I pushed myself to my feet. It took longer than it should have. My knees ached. My balance wavered. I picked up the cedar box and held it against my chest. Then I walked to the top of the stairs. Emma was standing at the bottom looking up. Her face was unreadable. That's it? She asked. That's all you want? I nodded. The rest can go, I said. She didn't argue, didn't ask what was in the box. Maybe she already knew. Maybe she didn't care. I came down the stairs one step at a time, slow, deliberate. When I reached the bottom, Emma moved aside. I walked past her through the empty living room toward the front door. The daylight outside was too bright. It hurt my eyes. I stepped onto the porch. The wood groaned under me. Behind me, I heard Emma lock the door. The sound was final, a period at the end of a sentence. I stood there on the porch, holding the cedar box. Emma came up beside me. She didn't look at me, just stared out at the street. I'll drive you back to Susan's, she said. I'll walk, I said. She glanced at me. Mom, it's 6 blocks. I know, she sighed, but she didn't argue. I stepped down off the porch. My cane hit the pavement. The cedar box felt heavier with each step. Behind me, I heard Emma get into her car. The engine started. She pulled out of the driveway and drove past me slowly. She didn't wave. I didn't either. I walked the 6 blocks in silence, the box in my arms, the envelope pressed against my heart, and somewhere deep in my chest, a feeling I couldn't name yet, that the house was gone, but the secrets weren't. The kitchen table was old oak, scarred and solid. I set the cedar box down in the center and just looked at it for a moment. Susan had gone to the store. The house was quiet, just me and the box and the afternoon light coming through the window. I opened it slowly. The smell rose up again, cedar and thyme and everything I'd tried to forget. I started taking things out, one piece at a time, carefully, like they might break if I moved too fast. I laid everything across the table in rows, photos on the left, documents in the middle, cards and letters on the right. It felt important to organize them, to make sense of something, even if it was just paper. I sorted by year first, then by type, my wedding photos next to the marriage certificate, Emma's baby pictures next to her birth certificate, David's discharge papers next to the flag they gave me at his funeral. My hands moved without thinking. This was what I did when things got hard. I organized. I made order out of chaos. It was the only control I had left. I kept going, pulling out envelopes and folding them open, reading dates, sorting, stacking, and then I found them, the receipts. They were clipped together with a rusted paper clip, folded in half, tucked beneath a stack of old tax returns. I pulled them out and spread them on the table. Invoice, receipt, paid in full. The first one was from March. Turner and Sons Roofing, complete roof replacement, shingles, underlayment, flashing. Total $18,200. Paid. I stared at it. March. I was still walking then, still driving, still living in my house like it was mine. I pulled out the next receipt. Dalton Electric, panel upgrade, rewiring second floor, new outlets throughout. Total $9,400. Paid. April, another one. Anderson Plumbing, water heater replacement, pipe repair, main line inspection. Total $6,800. Paid. May. I kept pulling them out, one after another. Foundation inspection, gutter replacement, HVAC servicing, pest control, window seals, all dated within the last 6 months, all marked paid in full. I added them up in my head, twice. Then a third time to be sure. Over $40,000. I sat back in the chair. My breath felt shallow, tight. The house wasn't falling apart, it was restored. Emma's voice echoed in my head, calm, rehearsed. The house was falling apart, Mom. The roof was leaking. The foundation had cracks. I looked down at the receipts again. New roof, fixed foundation, upgraded electrical. She lied. I knew it the way you know when a bone is broken, the way you know when something inside you shifts and can't be put back. She lied. But why? I picked up the roofing receipt again, ran my thumb over the ink, the date, the signature at the bottom, mine. I remembered signing it, remembered the man from Turner and Sons standing in my driveway with a clipboard. He'd been kind, patient, explained everything twice because I asked him to. The roof had been leaking for years, small drips at first, then bigger ones. I'd put buckets in the attic, ignored it as long as I could. But after David died, I decided to fix it, to take care of things, to stop letting the house fall apart around me. It had felt good, responsible, like I was still capable. I flipped to the electrical receipt. I remembered that too. The electrician had found old wiring, said it was a fire hazard. I'd paid him to fix it all. Every outlet, every switch, the plumbing, the HVAC, the windows. I'd taken care of it, all of it. I sat there staring at the evidence of my own competence and felt something crack open inside me. Emma hadn't sold the house because it was falling apart. She'd sold it because she wanted to. I pressed my palms flat against the table. My hands were shaking again. I thought about the sale price, $340,000. I thought about the trust she said she'd set up, the money she said was safe. I thought about the way she'd looked at me in Susan's living room, calm, controlled, saying all the right things. I did what I thought was best. For who? The question sat heavy in my chest. I gathered the receipts and stacked them carefully, clipped them back together, then I pulled out my phone. I didn't know who to call, didn't know what to say, didn't even know what I was looking for. But I opened the browser and typed, "How to contest power of attorney." The results loaded slowly. I scrolled through them. Legal terms I didn't understand, forms I didn't know how to fill out, lawyers I couldn't afford. I set the phone down and my chest felt tight. Susan came home just after 4. I heard her car in the driveway, the trunk opening, grocery bags rustling. She came in through the side door, arms full, and stopped when she saw me. The table, the papers, my face. She set the bags down slowly. Margaret? I looked up at her. She lied, I said. Susan didn't ask who. She just pulled out a chair and sat down beside me. I pushed the receipts toward her. She picked them up, read through them. Her face didn't change, but I saw her jaw tighten. "What are you going to do?" she asked quietly. I looked at the receipts, at the photos, at the pieces of my life spread across the table. "I don't know," I said, and it was the truth. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay on Susan's couch, staring at the ceiling. The envelope was still in my coat pocket. the one I'd taken from the cedar box. I hadn't opened it yet, couldn't, but I could feel it there, waiting. Outside, the wind picked up, the trees scraped against the window, and somewhere in the dark I understood Emma didn't just take my house, she took my choice, and I was going to have to decide if I wanted it back. The paralegal's office smelled like burnt coffee and old carpet. I sat in a plastic chair by the window, hands folded in my lap, watching the clock on the wall tick forward. It was the kind of clock that clicked with every second. Loud, insistent. Susan had driven me here. She was waiting in the car outside. The paralegal, a woman named Ruth with reading glasses on a chain, had told me it would take 2 days to pull the records. Maybe 3. It took 2. She called that morning, said she had something. Her voice on the phone had been careful, measured. That's when I knew. Ruth came out of the back room carrying a manila folder. She didn't smile, just gestured for me to follow her to a small desk in the corner. The kind of desk with scratches on the surface and a drawer that didn't close all the way. I sat down across from her and she opened the folder slowly, like she was giving me time to prepare. I pulled everything, she said. The deed transfer, the sale agreement, business registrations, all public record. I nodded. She slid the first document toward me. Warranty deed, transfer of property. I scanned the page, my address at the top, the legal description of the lot, the date of transfer, and then halfway down the buyer's name, Crestwood Development LLC. I stared at it. Do you recognize that name? Ruth asked. I shook my head. She pulled out another sheet, placed it next to the deed. This is the business registration, she said, filed with the state 6 months ago. I looked down, the company name again. Crestwood Development LLC. And below it in smaller print, managing member, Emma Hale. The room went quiet, not silent. Quiet. The kind of quiet where you can still hear the hum of the fluorescent lights overhead, the tick of the clock, your own heartbeat in your ears. I read the name again. Emma Hale, not Emma Hayes. Hale. Her married name. The one she took when she got married 10 years ago. The one I still wasn't used to, but it was her. My daughter. Ruth was watching me. Her face was neutral, professional, but I could see the flicker of something behind her eyes. Pity, maybe, or concern. She didn't sell it to a stranger, I said. My voice came out flat, numb. No, Ruth said quietly. She didn't. I sat back in the chair and my hands felt cold. What does this mean? I asked. Ruth folded her hands on the desk, chose her words carefully. It means your daughter used a limited liability company to purchase the property. It's not uncommon in real estate transactions. Sometimes people do it for privacy, or liability protection, or... She paused. Other reasons. What reasons? She hesitated. I can't speculate on intent, she said, but the structure allows her to control the property without it appearing in her personal name. And depending on how the LLC is set up, it could shield the asset from certain claims or disputes. I looked at her. You're saying she's hiding it? Ruth didn't answer right away. I'm saying, she said carefully, that the property is now owned by an entity she controls, not by her directly. I picked up the business registration and read it again. Crestwood Development LLC, filed 6 months ago, the same month I'd finished the roof repairs, the same month the house had finally been put back together. My chest tightened. She didn't sell the house because it was falling apart. She'd been planning this for months. I thought about the receipts, the repairs, the $40,000 I'd spent restoring everything, and I realized she'd waited for me to fix it, to make it valuable again. And then she took it. What can I do? I asked. Ruth leaned forward slightly. That depends, she said. Do you want to challenge the sale? Can I? Possibly. You'd need to prove that the power of attorney was misused, that the sale wasn't in your best interest, that there was fraud or undue influence. She paused. It's not easy, and it's expensive. How expensive? She gave me a look that said more than words could. I nodded slowly. There's something else, Ruth said. She pulled out another document, A printout from a real estate website. I looked down. It was a listing. My house. The photo at the top showed the front porch. Freshly painted, the lawn trimmed. It looked better than it had in years. Below the photo, for sale, $520,000. I stopped breathing. It went up 3 days ago, Ruth said quietly. $520,000. Emma had bought it for 340. She was flipping it. My house. The house I'd lived in for 30 years. The house where I raised her, where David died, where I'd spent $40,000 fixing every crack and leak and broken thing. She was selling it for profit. I stood up. My legs felt unsteady, but I stood. Ruth started to say something, but I was already moving toward the door. I walked out into the waiting area, through the front door, into the daylight. Susan got out of the car when she saw me. Margaret? I didn't answer. I just stood there on the sidewalk staring at nothing. The world kept moving around me. Cars passing, people walking, life continuing like nothing had changed. But something had. Something I couldn't take back or unsee or pretend wasn't real. My daughter had stolen my house. Not out of necessity, not out of care, out of greed. Susan drove me back in silence. I sat in the passenger seat, the folder in my lap, staring out the window. When we pulled up to her house, I didn't move right away. What are you going to do? Susan asked softly. I looked down at the folder, at the name printed in black ink. Crestwood Development LLC, managing member Emma Hale. I don't know yet, I said. But that was a lie. I knew. I just wasn't ready to say it out loud. The streetlights came on just as I turned the corner. I hadn't planned to come back here, hadn't planned to walk these streets again, but my feet brought me anyway. Past the park, past the church, all the way to the block I used to call home. I stopped at the edge of the sidewalk and looked down the street. My house was dark, empty. A for sale sign stood in the front yard now, bright and gleaming under the streetlight. I turned away, and that's when I saw Mr. Alvarez on his porch. He was sitting in his rocking chair, the way he always did in the evenings, a mug of something warm in his hands. He looked older than I remembered, thinner, but his eyes were still sharp. He saw me standing there and raised a hand. Not a wave, just an acknowledgement. I crossed the street slowly, my cane clicking against the pavement. Margaret, he said as I approached. His voice was soft, kind. I wondered if you'd come back. Just passing through, I said. He nodded, didn't believe me, but didn't push. You want some tea? He asked. I just made a pot. I hesitated. He stood, his knees cracking, and opened the screen door. Come on, he said. It's getting cold out here. His house smelled like cinnamon and old wood. The living room was small, cluttered with books and newspapers and framed photos of grandchildren I'd never met. He gestured to the couch, and I sat. He disappeared into the kitchen and came back with 2 mugs, handed me one. The ceramic was warm against my palms. He sat down in the armchair across from me and took a slow sip. We didn't talk right away, just sat there in the quiet, the way old neighbors do. Finally, he set his mug down on the side table. I'm sorry about the house, he said. I looked at him. You knew? I saw, he said. Hard not to, living this close. I wrapped my hands tighter around the mug. What did you see? He leaned back in his chair. His eyes drifted toward the window, toward my house across the street. Moving trucks, he said. 3 of them. They came while you were still in the hospital. Took almost everything out. Furniture, boxes, even that old piano in the living room. I felt something twist in my chest. When? I asked. End of August, he said. Maybe early September, right after you went into the ICU. I nodded slowly. He continued. Then the real estate agents started coming. Different ones, with clipboards and cameras. They'd walk through the yard, take pictures, measure things. He paused. And there was a surveyor. Came out twice. Marked the property lines with those little flags. Did you see Emma? I asked. His face changed, just slightly. Every day, he said quietly. I set the mug down. My hands were shaking. Every day? He nodded. She was there almost every morning, sometimes with contractors, sometimes with inspectors, once with a man in a suit I didn't recognize. He looked at me. I thought you knew. I thought you'd asked her to handle things while you were recovering. I shook my head. I didn't know, I said. The room went quiet again. Mr. Alvarez picked up his mug but didn't drink, just held it, stared into it. There was one day, he said slowly, when the inspectors were there. They were looking at the roof, the foundation, writing things down. Emma was with them, and I remember thinking, she looks happy. He glanced at me. Not relieved, not worried, happy. I felt the air leave my lungs. She was planning it, I said. I don't know, he said, but it looked like she knew what she was doing. I stood up. My legs felt weak, but I stood. Thank you, I said, for the tea, for telling me. He stood too, slower, steadier. Margaret, he said, if you need anything. I know, I said. He walked me to the door, opened it. The cool evening air rushed in. I stepped out onto the porch. She used to play in that yard, he said quietly. I turned. He was standing in the doorway looking past me toward my house. When she was little, he said, she'd run around out there, chase butterflies. You'd call her in for dinner and she'd pretend not to hear you. His eyes met mine. I don't know what happened, he said, but I'm sorry. I nodded. I didn't trust myself to speak. I walked back down his steps and onto the sidewalk. The street was quiet now. No cars, no voices, just the hum of the streetlights and the sound of my cane against the pavement. I looked at my house one more time. The dark windows, the empty driveway, the for sale sign glowing under the light. And I thought about Emma, standing in that yard, walking through those rooms, meeting with contractors and inspectors and men in suits, while I was lying in a hospital bed, unconscious, dying. She'd been planning this. Not after the accident, before. I turned and started walking, away from the house, away from the memories, but I couldn't walk away from the feeling. The tightness in my chest, the weight pressing down on my ribs. It wasn't just grief anymore. It was something sharper, something colder, anger. By the time I made it back to Susan's, the sky had gone fully dark. I let myself in quietly. Susan was in the kitchen. She looked up when I came in, her face full of questions. But she didn't ask. She just poured me a glass of water and set it on the table. I sat down, stared at the glass. I know what she did, I said. Susan sat across from me. What are you going to do about it? She asked. I looked up, and for the first time in weeks, I felt something settle inside me. Not peace, resolve. I'm going to fight back, I said. The house was asleep when I finally took it out. Midnight, maybe later. The kind of hour when even the walls stop creaking and the world goes still. I sat at Susan's kitchen table with just the small lamp on. The rest of the house was dark, quiet. The envelope was in front of me, white, plain, worn soft at the edges from years of being hidden. I'd carried it with me since the day I took it from the cedar box, kept it in my coat pocket, close, but not close enough to open. Until now. My hands were steady as I picked it up. That surprised me. I'd expected them to shake, expected my breath to catch, but they didn't. Maybe I'd been preparing for this moment longer than I thought. I slid my finger under the flap. The glue had dried years ago. It opened easily. Inside was a single piece of paper, folded in thirds. The creases were deep, permanent. I unfolded it slowly, and I saw his handwriting. David's, slanted to the right, neat but hurried, the way he wrote when he had something important to say. The date at the top stopped me. November 14th, 3 years before he died. I took a breath and started reading. Emma, I'm writing this because I need you to know something, and I don't think I'll have the courage to say it out loud. Your mother and I have been talking about the house, about what happens when we're gone. We don't always agree on these things, but I want you to know what I believe is right. The house should be yours. Not someday far off, not when you're old and don't need it anymore. But when the time comes, when we're not here to take care of it, it should go to you. You grew up there. You know every corner of it. And I think deep down, it's always been meant for you. Your mother wants to stay. I understand that. This house is her whole life. But Emma, I need you to understand something too. She can't hold on to it forever. And when the time comes, I need you to be strong enough to make the decision she won't. Keep it in the family, take care of it. That's all I'm asking. I love you, I'm proud of you, and I trust you to do what's right. Dad, I set the letter down. My hands were shaking now. I read it again, slower this time, every word. Keep it in the family. Make the decision she won't. I leaned back in the chair and closed my eyes. I remembered the day he wrote this. November. 3 years before the cancer took him. We'd been sitting in the living room. He'd been quiet all evening, distant. I'd asked him what was wrong and he'd said nothing. Just tired. But I knew. We'd been fighting about the house, about what would happen when we were gone. He'd wanted to leave it to Emma. Outright. In the will. I'd said no. I'd told him I wasn't ready, that I needed to stay, that it was my home, not hers. Not yet. He'd dropped it after that, or so I thought. But he'd written this, a letter to Emma, behind my back, and I'd found it. I don't remember how. Maybe he'd left it out. Maybe I'd been looking through his desk. The details are blurred now, worn away by guilt and time, but I remember reading it, and I remember what I did next. I took it, I folded it back up, slipped it into the cedar box, hid it beneath the photos and receipts and everything else I didn't want to look at, and I never gave it to her. David never asked about it. Maybe he forgot. Maybe he thought he'd already sent it. Or maybe he knew. Maybe he saw the way I looked at him after that, the way I stopped talking about the future, the way I held onto the house even tighter. He died 2 years later, and I never told Emma the letter existed. I opened my eyes and looked at it again. The ink was faded in places, the paper yellowed, but the words were still clear. I need you to be strong enough to make the decision she won't. My chest felt tight. I thought about Emma standing in Susan's living room, calm, composed, saying all the right things. I did what I thought was best. I thought about the shell company, the sale, the listing for $520,000. And I thought about this letter. Did she find it? What? Had she gone through the house while I was in the hospital? Gone through the cedar box, read these words? Is that why she did it? Not out of greed, but out of belief. Belief that she was doing what her father wanted, what he'd asked her to do. I folded the letter carefully, slipped it back into the envelope. My hands were trembling. I didn't know what I felt. Anger, guilt, grief, all of it tangled together in a knot I couldn't untie. David had wanted Emma to have the house, and I'd kept that from her. I'd hidden his wishes, his voice, his last request, and now she'd taken it. Maybe she thought she was honoring him, or maybe she'd never found the letter at all. Maybe I was just making excuses for her, for myself. I sat there in the dim light, the envelope in my hands. Outside, the wind picked up, the trees rustled. Somewhere down the street, a dog barked once and went quiet. I looked at the letter, at David's handwriting, his words, his hope that Emma would do what was right. And I realized something. I didn't know who was right anymore. Him, me, Emma. Maybe we were all wrong, or maybe we were all just trying to hold on to something that was never really ours to begin with. I stood up slowly. My ribs ached. My legs felt heavy. I turned off the lamp and walked to the couch in the dark. I lay down, pulled the blanket over me. But I didn't sleep. I just stared at the ceiling and wondered if Emma had read the letter, and if she had, if that changed anything at all. The diner smelled like coffee and bacon grease. I sat in a booth by the window, watching cars pull in and out of the parking lot. The vinyl seat was cracked, the table was sticky, but it was neutral ground. Not my house, not hers, somewhere in between. I'd called her that morning, kept my voice calm, asked if we could meet. She'd hesitated, then said yes. I told her the place, told her the time, and now I was waiting. She arrived 20 minutes late. I saw her car pull into the lot, the same sleek rental. She sat there for a moment before getting out, checking her phone, stalling. Finally, she stepped out and walked toward the entrance. I watched her through the window. She was wearing jeans today, a sweater, her hair down. She looked tired. The bell above the door chimed as she came in. She spotted me right away and walked over, slid into the booth across from me without a word. The waitress came by, asked if we wanted anything. Just coffee, Emma said. I shook my head. The waitress left. We sat in silence. I'd brought a folder with me. Brown. Plain. It sat on the table between us. Emma looked at it, then at me. What's this about, Mom? I didn't answer right away. I opened the folder slowly, pulled out the first document, the receipts. I laid them on the table, one by one. Roofing, electrical, plumbing, $40,000 worth of repairs. Emma glanced down, her jaw tightened. Then I pulled out the sale documents, the deed transfer, the business registration, Crestwood Development, LLC. Managing member, Emma Hale. I placed them beside the receipts. Her face didn't change, but her hands did. They curled into fists on the table. Then I pulled out the letter, David's letter, the one I'd hidden, the one I'd never given her. I unfolded it carefully and set it in the center of the table. She looked at it, and something in her eyes shifted. Recognition. Did you do this because you thought I owed you? I asked. My voice was steady, quiet, not accusing, just asking. Emma stared at the letter, didn't touch it, didn't look up. The waitress came back with the coffee, set it down. Emma didn't reach for it. We waited until she left. Then Emma finally spoke. I found it, she said. Her voice was low, tight. Found what? I asked, even though I knew. A copy, she said. In Dad's email. He'd scanned it before he died. Saved it in a folder labeled important. I found it 2 years ago when I was going through his old accounts. She looked up at me then. You never gave it to me, she said. I nodded. No, I said. I didn't. Why? I took a breath. Because I wasn't ready, I said. Because I didn't want to give up the house. Because I was selfish. Her eyes narrowed. You were more than selfish, she said. You erased him. You took his voice and hid it from me. I didn't argue. She was right. Emma leaned back in the booth. Her hands were shaking now. Do you know what it felt like? She asked. Reading that letter, knowing he wanted me to have the house, knowing you'd kept it from me all these years. I can imagine, I said quietly. No, she said. You can't. She picked up the coffee cup, held it but didn't drink. I felt erased, she said. Like I didn't matter. Like my whole life you'd been making decisions for me, about me, without me. Her voice cracked, just slightly. And when you had that heart attack, she said, when they called me and said you might not make it, she stopped, set the cup down. I thought, this is it. This is my chance to do what he wanted, to take what should have been mine. I looked at her, really looked at her. The woman sitting across from me wasn't the little girl who used to chase butterflies in the yard, wasn't the teenager who rolled her eyes at my advice, wasn't even the young woman who cried at her father's funeral. She was someone else now, someone I didn't recognize. So you took it, I said. She nodded. I took it. While I was dying. She flinched, but she didn't look away. You weren't supposed to wake up, she said. Her voice was barely above a whisper. The doctors said, they said you probably wouldn't. And I thought if this is happening anyway, I should honor Dad. I should do what he asked. By stealing from me. By taking what was already mine. The words hung between us. Hard. Final. I folded my hands on the table. I'm still alive, Emma, I said. She blinked. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. I know, she said. No, I said. I don't think you do. I leaned forward slightly. I woke up, I said. I survived. And you still went through with it. You still sold my house. You still lied to me. You still tried to convince me it was falling apart when you knew it wasn't. Her face crumbled, just for a second, then she rebuilt it. What do you want me to say? She asked. I want you to tell me the truth, I said. Was it about honoring your father, or was it about the money? She didn't answer, just looked down at the table, at the letter, at the receipts, at the evidence of everything she'd done. I don't know anymore, she said finally. I sat back. My chest felt tight, my ribs ached, but I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I just looked at my daughter and felt the distance between us widen into something I didn't know how to cross. I loved your father, I said quietly, and I was wrong to hide that letter. I know that now. She looked up. But Emma, I said, you were wrong too. She opened her mouth to respond, but I was already standing. I picked up the folder, left the letter on the table. Keep it, I said. It's yours. It always was. I turned and walked toward the door. Behind me, I heard her say my name. Once, soft, broken, but I didn't turn around. I stepped out into the parking lot, into the cold, bright air, and I kept walking. The sky was gray and heavy. Rain was coming. I could feel it in the air, in the weight of the clouds pressing down. I stood by my car for a moment, just breathing. Inside the diner, through the window, I could see Emma still sitting in the booth, staring at the letter, not moving. I got in the car, started the engine, and as I pulled out of the parking lot, I realized something. I didn't know if I'd ever see her again, and I didn't know if I wanted to. The lawyer's office had gray walls and no windows. I sat across from a man named Richard Miller, mid-50s, tired eyes, a wedding band worn thin. He'd come recommended by Ruth, the paralegal. He listened while I explained everything: the sale, the shell company, the power of attorney, the letter from David. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair and folded his hands. This is going to be difficult," he said. I know," I said. And expensive." I nodded. He looked at me for a long moment, like he was deciding if I was serious. How much do you have? He asked. Enough to start, I said. He pulled out a yellow legal pad and started writing. The paperwork began 2 days later. Petition to void the sale, allegations of fraud, misuse of power of attorney, lack of informed consent. Every word felt like a stone I was carrying. Richard warned me it would take time, months maybe. Emma would fight back. She had lawyers too, good ones. Are you prepared for that? He asked. I looked down at the papers in front of me, at my signature at the bottom. Yes, I said, but I wasn't sure I believed it. Emma's response came 3 weeks later. Her lawyer filed a counter petition, claimed she'd acted in my best interest, that I was incapacitated, that the house was a burden I could no longer manage. They included medical records from the hospital, notes from doctors about my recovery, my age, my physical limitations. Richard showed me the documents. I read them in silence. They made me sound like someone who couldn't think for herself, couldn't make decisions, couldn't survive without help. Maybe they were right, but that didn't make what Emma did legal. We didn't speak, not for weeks. I'd see her name on legal documents, her lawyer's motions, her statements claiming she was protecting me. But I didn't hear her voice, didn't see her face. It was like we'd become strangers who only existed on paper. Susan asked me once if I'd thought about calling her. I said no. Why not? She asked. I didn't have an answer, or maybe I did and I just couldn't say it out loud. Because if I called her, I'd have to decide forgiveness or justice, mother or victim, and I wasn't ready to choose. The knock came on a Tuesday afternoon. I was in the small apartment I'd rented with what little money I had left. One bedroom, a kitchenette, a view of a parking lot. It wasn't much, but it was mine. I wasn't expecting anyone. I opened the door slowly, and there she was, Emma, standing in the hallway, no lawyer, no folder, no rehearsed explanations. Just her. Her eyes were red, her face puffy. She'd been crying. Mom, she said. Her voice cracked on the word. I stood there, hand on the doorknob. We looked at each other. Can I come in? She asked. I hesitated. Then I stepped aside. She walked into the apartment slowly, looking around, taking it in, the cramped space, the secondhand furniture, the single window. This was what was left. She sat down on the couch without asking, folded her hands in her lap. I stayed standing. Why are you here? I asked. She looked up at me. Her eyes were glassy, tired. I didn't think it would go this far, she said. I didn't respond. I thought, she paused, took a breath. I thought you'd understand, that you'd see I was doing what Dad wanted, that you'd let it go. Let it go, I repeated. I know how that sounds, she said quickly. I know, but Mom, I really believed that you could take my house while I was dying and I'd just be okay with it. She flinched. No, she said. I believed I was doing the right thing. I sat down in the chair across from her. For who, Emma? She looked down at her hands. I don't know anymore, she said quietly. The silence stretched between us. Long, heavy. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. I'm sorry, she said. The words came out small, broken. I'm sorry I took the house. I'm sorry I lied. I'm sorry I made you feel like you didn't matter. She looked up at me. I'm sorry I hurt you. I stared at her, at my daughter, the person I'd raised, the person I thought I knew. Are you sorry you did it? I asked. Or are you sorry you got caught? Her face crumpled. Both, she whispered. I think both. I leaned back in the chair. My chest ached. My head felt heavy. I wanted to yell, to tell her how much she'd taken from me, how much she'd broken, but I didn't. Because underneath the anger, there was something else. Grief. For the relationship we used to have. For the daughter I thought she was. For the mother I thought I'd been. I don't forgive you, I said. She nodded, tears sliding down her cheeks. I know, she said. Not yet, I added. Maybe not ever. I don't know. She swallowed hard. I understand, but, I said slowly, I'm listening. She looked up. That's all I can do right now, I said. Listen, without lawyers, without papers, just this. She nodded again, wiped her face. Okay, she said. Okay. We sat there in that small apartment. No resolution, no fix, no magic words that could undo what had been done. Just two people who used to be close, trying to figure out if there was anything left worth saving. Emma stayed for an hour. We didn't talk about the lawsuit, or the house, or the money. We talked about small things, quiet things. The weather, Susan's kindness, how I was healing, and when she finally stood to leave, she paused at the door. Can I come back? She asked. I looked at her. I don't know, I said honestly. She nodded. But you can try, I added. Something flickered in her eyes. Not hope, not quite, but something close. After she left, I sat alone in the quiet. The apartment felt emptier than before. I looked out the window at the parking lot, at the gray sky, at the world that kept moving whether I was ready or not. I didn't know what came next, didn't know if Emma and I could ever go back. But for the first time in months, I felt something shift. Not forgiveness, not yet, but maybe the beginning of it. Or maybe just the acknowledgement that we were both still here, still breathing, still trying. The phone call came on a Wednesday afternoon. Richard's voice on the other end was calm, professional, but I could hear something underneath it. Relief, maybe. The judge ruled in your favor, he said. The sale has been reversed. The property will be returned to your name. I sat down slowly on the edge of the bed. When? I asked. 30 days, he said. There are some final documents to process, but Margaret, you won. The house is yours. I thanked him, hung up, and sat there in the silence trying to feel something. Victory, relief, vindication. But all I felt was tired. The money was almost gone. Legal fees, court costs, expert witnesses. 3 months of fighting had drained the account I'd built from the repair savings. I'd spent $40,000 fixing the house, and another $30,000 getting it back. Richard had warned me this would happen, that even if I won, I'd lose something. He was right, but I'd made my choice, and now the house was mine again, for whatever that was worth. Emma left 2 weeks before the judgment came through. She didn't tell me she was going, didn't call or write or say goodbye. I found out through Susan who'd heard it from Mr. Alvarez, who'd seen the moving truck. She'd packed up and moved out of state. Colorado, someone said, or maybe Montana, somewhere far, somewhere I couldn't reach her even if I wanted to. I told myself it was better this way. Cleaner, no more lawyers, no more confrontations, just distance. But late at night, when the apartment was too quiet, I'd think about her. Wonder if she was okay. Wonder if she ever thought about me. Wonder if we'd ever speak again. The keys arrived in the mail on a Sunday morning. A small padded envelope. No return address. Just my name written in careful handwriting that wasn't Emma's. Inside were 2 brass keys on a ring I recognized. The spare set, the ones I used to keep in the kitchen drawer. There was no note. I held them in my palm, felt their weight, cold, solid, familiar. I looked out the window of the apartment. at the parking lot, at the gray morning light. And I knew what I had to do. Susan drove me. She didn't ask if I was ready, didn't try to talk me out of it or into it. She just drove. When we pulled up to the house, she put the car in park and looked at me. You want me to come in with you? She asked. I shook my head. I need to do this alone. She nodded, squeezed my hand once. I got out of the car. The house looked smaller than I remembered. The paint was still peeling. The porch steps still sagged, but the for sale sign was gone. I stood at the bottom of the steps, looking up. My house. The words felt strange in my head, unfamiliar, like they didn't quite fit anymore. I climbed the steps slowly, my cane tapping against the wood. At the top, I stopped, pulled the keys from my coat pocket. The brass was tarnished now, dull, but the key still fit the lock. I turned it. The door opened with a quiet creak, and I stepped inside. The house was empty. The furniture was gone. The pictures, the rugs, everything. Just bare walls and scuffed floors and the faint smell of dust and old wood. My footsteps echoed as I walked through the rooms. The living room, the kitchen, the hallway. It felt like a shell, like something had been carved out and only the frame remained. I climbed the stairs slowly. Each step groaned under my weight. The sound filled the empty house. At the top, I turned toward the bedroom. The door was open. I stepped inside. The room was just as empty as the rest. No bed, no dresser, no curtains on the windows. But I walked to the corner anyway, knelt down slowly, my knees protesting, and reached under where the bed used to be. The cedar box was still there, pushed into the corner, waiting. I pulled it out and sat back against the wall, the box in my lap. I opened it. Inside, everything was still there. The photos, the receipts, the letters, David's letter to Emma, now folded and worn from being read too many times, and beneath it all, the things I hadn't looked at yet. I sifted through them slowly. Old birthday cards, a pressed flower from my wedding bouquet, a ticket stub from a movie David and I saw on our first date. All the pieces of a life I'd lived, a life that felt far away now. I closed the box and set it beside me, looked around the empty room. The house was mine again, but it wasn't the same. It never would be. Too much had happened here. Too much had been taken. Too much had been lost. Emma, David, the version of myself I used to be, all of it, gone. But I was still here, and the house was still standing, and maybe that was enough. I stood up slowly, picked up the cedar box, walked back downstairs, my footsteps echoing through the empty rooms. At the front door, I paused, looked back at the house one more time. The bare walls, the scuffed floors, the light coming through the windows. It wasn't much, but it was mine. And for the first time in months, I got to decide what happened next. I stepped out onto the porch and locked the door behind me. Susan was still waiting in the car. She smiled when she saw me. I walked down the steps, the cedar box under my arm, the keys in my pocket. And as I got into the car, I realized something. Winning didn't feel the way I thought it would. It didn't feel triumphant or victorious or even satisfying. It just felt quiet, like the end of something, and maybe the beginning of something else. Susan pulled away from the curb. I looked back at the house through the window. Small, tired, empty, but still there, still mine. I turned forward, and I didn't look back again. Because whatever came next, whether I sold it or kept it or burned it down, it would be my choice. Not Emma's, not David's, not anyone's, but mine. And that, I decided, was enough.